Hello. 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 I can hear myself now. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another reading stream. Hit the camera. Okay. Hello, everyone. We are back with another reading live stream. Again, reading Fahrenheit 451 and continuing on from where we ended. So last time we actually got the stream to work and we actually got to start reading. Now we've read pretty much the first 1/5 of the book through like 30 pages. And now we're going to be continuing on with another 30 pages because I feel like I would just because 30 pages would be a good amount for the live stream, because the last time we read it's 1 hour and 50 minutes long, so reading 30 pages and also processing those 30 pages will take quite a long time, but still we can split this into at least five live streams, reading all these pages all the way until the end, which is 158 pages. But anyways, yeah, and also you can see the book unbelievably clearly. Like, look at this. Look at this, it's absolutely beautiful. Anyways, let's get on to where we left off. I have to adjust some stuff. Okay, here we go. Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. And continuing on, we're just gonna read straight from page 30, starting from here, and then we're just gonna go all the way to page 60 for this stream. But anyways, yeah, let's continue. Last time we met Montag, who was a fireman tasked with burning books and the entire house that contains the books, because books are banned from where he's from. And then all of a sudden, he met this young girl named Clarence, who opened his mind to many things and started questioning the world, and starting to make Montag question the world around him. And here we are. That's like the only important part. There are a lot of other important stuff, but we're just not gonna get to that. So I can see the stream is doing fine. There's no frame breaks, the audio is clear, and let's just get right on to it. Page 30. What's wrong, Montag? Montag opened his eyes. A radio hummed somewhere. War may be declared at any hour. This country stands ready to defend it. The firehouse trembled as a great flight of jet planes, whilst a single note whistled a single note across the black morning sky. Montag blinked. BT was looking at him as if he were a museum statue. At any moment, BT might rise and walk about him, touching him, exploring his guilt and self-consciousness. Guilt? What guilt was that? Your play, Montag. Montag looked at these men whose faces were sunburnt by 1,000 real and 10,000 imaginary fires, whose work flushed their cheeks and fevered their eyes. These men who looked steadily into their platinum igniter flames as they lit their eternally burning black pipes. They and their charcoal hair and soot-colored brows and blushish, ash-smeared cheeks where they had shaven clothes. But their heritage showed. Montag started up. His mouth opened up. Had he ever seen a fireman that didn't have black hair, brown brows, a fiery face, and a blue steel shaved but unshaved look? These men were all mirror images of himself. Were all firemen picked then for their looks as well as their proclivities? The colors of cinders and ash about them, the continual smell of burning from the continuous smell of burning from their pipes. Captain BT there, rising in thunderheads of tobacco smoke. BT opening a fresh tobacco packet, crumbling the cellophane into a sound of fire. Montag looked at the cards in his own hands. I've been thinking about the fire last week, about the man whose library we fixed. What happened to him? They took him screaming off to the asylum. He wasn't insane. BT arranged his cards quietly. Any man's insane who thinks he can fool the government and us. I've tried to imagine, said Montag, just how it would feel. I mean, to have firemen burn our houses and our books. We haven't any books, but if we did have some, you got some? BT blinked slowly. No. Montag gazed beyond them to the wall with the typed lists of a million forbidden books, their names lit in fire, burning down the years under his axe and his hose, which sprayed not water but kerosene. No, but in his mind, a cool wind started up and blew the ventilator grill at home, softly chilling his face. And again, he saw himself in the green park talking to an old man, a very old man, and the wind from the park was cold, too. Montag hesitated. What was it always like this? The firehouse work? I mean, well, once upon a time, BT said. What kind of talk is that? Fool, thought Montag to himself. You'll give it away. At the last fire, a book of fairy tales, he had glanced at a single line. I mean, he said, in the old days, before homes were completely fireproofed. Suddenly, it seemed a much younger voice was speaking for him. He opened his mouth, and it was Clarence McClellan saying, didn't firemen prevent fires rather than stoke them up and get them going? Getting towards the interrogation by BT on Montag. That's rich. Stoneman and Black drew forth the rule books, which also contained brief histories of the firemen of America, and laid them out where Montag, though long familiar with them, might read. Established 1790 to burn English-influenced books in the colonies. First fireman, Benjamin Franklin. Rule 1. Answer the alarm quickly. 2. Rule 2. Start the fire swiftly. Rule 3. Burn everything. Rule 4. Report back to firehouse immediately. Rule 5. Stand alert for other alarms. Everyone watched Montag. He did not move. The alarm sounded. The bell in the ceiling kicked itself 200 times. Suddenly, there were 4 empty chairs. The cots fell in a flurry of snow. The brass pole shivered. The men were gone. Montag sat in his chair. Below, the orange dragon coughed to life. Montag slid down the pole like a man in a dream. The mechanical hound leaped up in its kernel, and its eyes all green flame. Montag, you forgot your helmet. He seized it off the wall behind him, ran, leaped, and they were off. The night wind hammering about their siren scream and their mighty metal thunder. It was a flaky 3-story house in the ancient part of the city, a century old if it was a day. But like all houses, it had been given a thin fireproof plastic sheath many years ago, and this preservative shell seemed to be the only thing holding it in the sky. Here we are. The engine slammed to a stop. Beatty, Stoneman, and Black ran up the sidewalk. Suddenly, oleous and fat in the plum fireproof slickers. Montag followed. They crashed the front door and grabbed at a woman, though she was not running. She was not trying to escape. She was only standing, weaving from side to side, her eyes fixed upon a nothingness in the wall, as if they had struck her a terrible blow upon the head. Her tongue was moving to her mouth, and her eyes seemed to be trying to remember something, and then they remembered, and her tongue moved again. Play the man, Master Ridley. We shall this day light such a candle, by God's grace, in England, as I trust shall never be put out. Enough of that, said Beatty. Where are they? He slapped her face with amazing objectivity. He slapped her face with amazing objectivity and repeated the question. The old woman's eyes came to a focus upon Beatty. You know where they are, or you wouldn't be here, she said. Stoneman held out the telephone alarm card with the complaint signed in telephone duplicate on the back. Have reason to suspect attic 11, number 11, Elm City, EB. That would be Mrs. Blake's, my neighbor, said the woman, reading the initials. All right, men, let's get him. Next thing, they were up in musty blackness, swinging silver hatchets at doors that were, after all, unlocked, tumbling through like boys, all rocklet, and shouts, "Hey, hey!" A fountain of books sprang down upon Montag as he climbed shuddering up the sheer stairwell. How inconvenient! Always before it had been like snuffing a candle. The police went first, and adhesive taped the victim's mouth and bandaged him off into the glittering beetle cars. So when you arrive, you find the So when you arrived, you found an empty house. You weren't hurting anyone. You weren't hurting. You were hurting only things. And since things really can't be hurt, since things felt nothing, and things don't scream or whimper, as this woman might begin to scream and cry out, there was nothing to tease your consciousness later. You were simply cleaning up, janitorial work. Janitorial work, essentially. Everything to its proper place. Quick with the kerosene. Who's got a match? But now, tonight, someone had slipped. This woman was spoiling the ritual. The men were making too much noise, laughing, joking, to cover her terrible accusing silence below. She made the empty rooms roar with accusation and shake down a fine dust of guilt that was stuck in their nostrils as they plunged about. It was neither cricket nor correct. Montag felt an immense irritation. She shouldn't be here, on top of everything. Books bombarded his shoulders, his arms, his upturned face. A book lit almost obediently, like a white pigeon in his hands, wings fluttering. In the dim, the wavering light, a page hung open, and it was like a snowy feather. The words delicately painted thereon. In all the rush and fever, Montag had only an instinct to read a line, but it blazed in his mind for the next minute, as if stamped there with fiery steel. Time has fallen asleep in the afternoon sunshine. He dropped the book immediately. Immediately, another fell into his arms. Montag, up here. Montag's hand closed like a mouth, crushed the book with violent devotion, with an insanity of mindlessness to his chest. The men above were hurling shovelfuls of magazines into the dusty air. They fell like slaughtered birds, and the woman stood below, like a small girl, among the bodies. The description detailing, my gosh. Montag had done nothing. His hand had done it all. His hand, with a brain of his own, with a consciousness and a curiosity in each trembling finger, had turned theft. Now it plunged the book back under his arm, pressed it tight to sweating armpit, rushed out empty with a magician's flourish. Look here, innocent, look. He gazed, shaken at that white hand. He held it way out, as if he were far-sighted. He held it close, as if he were blind. Montag, he jerked about. Don't stand there, idiot. The books lay like great mounds of fishes left to dry. The men danced and slipped and fell over them. Titles glittered their golden eyes, falling, gone. Kerosene! They pumped the cold fluid from the numeraled 451 tanks strapped to their shoulders. They coated each book. They pumped rooms full of it. They hurried downstairs, Montag staggering after them in the kerosene fumes. Come on, woman. The woman kneeled among the books, touching the trench letter and cardboard, reading the glint titles with her fingers while her eyes accused Montag. You can't ever have my books, she said. You know the law, said BT. Where's your common sense? None of those books agree with each other. You've been locked up here for years with a single damned Tower of Babel. Snap out of it. The people in those books never lived. Come on now. She shook her head. The whole house is going up, said BT. The men walked clumsily to the door. They glanced back at Montag, who stood near the woman. "You're not leaving her here," he protested. "She won't come." "Force her, then." Beatty raised his hand, in which was concealed the igniter. "We're due back at the house. Besides, these fanatics always try suicide. The pattern's familiar." Montag placed his hand on the woman's elbow. "You can come with me." "No," she said. "Thank you anyway." "I'm counting to 10, said Beatty. 1, 2, please, said Montag. "Go on," said the woman. 3, 4. "Here," Montag pulled at the woman. And the woman replied quietly, "I want to stay here." 5, 6. "You can stop counting," she said. He opened the fingers of one hand slightly, and in the palm of the hand was a single slender object, an ordinary kitchen match. Show the camera again. And charging cable. Anyways. An ordinary kitchen match. The sight of it rushed the man out and down away from the house. Captain Beatty, keeping his dignity, backed slowly through the front door, his pink face burnt and shiny from 1,000 fires and night excitements. God, thought Montag, how true. Always at night the alarm comes, never by day. Is it because fire is prettier by night? More spectacle, a better show? The pink face of Beatty now showed the faintest panic in the door. The woman's hand twitched on the single matchstick. The fumes of kerosene bloomed up about her. Montag felt the hidden book pound like a pot against his chest. "Go on," said the woman, and Montag felt himself back away and away out the door. After Beatty stepped down the steps across the lawn where the path of kerosene lay like the track of some evil snail. On the front porch where she had come to wait them quietly with her eyes, her quietness, a condemnation, the woman stood motionless. Beatty flicked his fingers to spark the kerosene. He was too late. Montag gasped. The woman on the porch reached out with contempt to them all and struck the candle match against the railing. People ran out of houses all down the street. They said nothing on their way back to the firehouse. Nobody looked at anyone else. Montag sat in the front seat with Beatty and Black. They did not even smoke their pipes. They sat there looking out the front of the great salamander as they turned a corner and went silently on. The old woman. I think the old woman just burned down with the house. And pretty much the entire neighborhood and Montag and his crew just watched her go down with her. I think that's like the first recorded death in this book. "Master Ridley," said Montag at last. "What?" said Beatty. She said, Master Ridley. She said some crazy thing when we came in the door. "Play the man," she said. "Master Ridley. Something, something, something. We shall this day light such a candle, by God's grace, in England, as I trust shall never be put out," said Beatty. Stoneman glanced over at the captain, as did Montag, startled. Beatty rubbed his chin. "A man named Latmere said that to a man named Nicholas Ridley, as they were being burnt alive at Oxford for heresy on October 16th, 1555. Montag and Stoneman went back to looking at the street as it moved under the engine wheels. I'm full of bits and pieces, said Beatty. Most fire captains have to be. Sometimes I surprise myself. Watch it, Stoneman. Stoneman braked the truck. Damn, said Beatty. You've gone right by the corner where we turn for the firehouse. Who is it? Who would it be? Said Montag, leaning back against the closed door in the dark. His wife said at last, Well, put on the light. I don't want the light. Come to bed. He heard her roll impatiently. The bed springs squeaked. Are you drunk? She said. So it was the hand that started it all. He felt one hand, and then the other work. His coat free, and let it slump to the floor. He held his pants out into an abyss and let them fall into darkness. His hands had been infected, and soon it would be his arms. He could feel the poison waking up his wrists and into his elbows and his shoulders, and then the jump over from shoulder blade to shoulder blade, like a spark leaping a gap. His hands were ravenous, and his eyes were beginning to feel hunger, as if they must look at something, anything, everything. His wife said, What are you doing? He bounced into space with the book in his sweating cold fingers. A minute later she said, Well, just don't stand there in the middle of the floor. He made a small sound. What? She asked. He made more soft sounds. He stumbled toward the bed and shoved the book clumsily under the cold pillow. He fell into bed, and his wife cried out, startled. He lay far across the room from her, on a winter island separated by an empty sea. She talked to him for what seemed a long while, and she talked about this, and she talked about that, and it was only words, like the words he had heard once in a nursery at a friend's house. A 2-year-old child building word patterns, talking jargon, making pretty sounds in the air, but Montag said nothing, and after a long while, when he only made the smallest sounds, he felt her move in the room and come to his bed and stand over him, and put her hand down to feel his cheek. He knew that when she pulled her hand away from his face, it was wet. So Montag just sneaked the book back to his house, and his wife might be a bit, you could say, suspicious of whatever he's doing. Late in the night, he looked over at Mildred. She was awake. There was a tiny dance of melody in the air. Her seashell was tamped in her ear again, and she was listening to far people in far places, her eyes wide and staring at the fathoms of blackness above her in the ceiling. Wasn't there an old joke about the wife who talked so much on the telephone that her desperate husband ran out to the nearest store and telephoned her to ask what was for dinner? Well then, why didn't he buy himself an audio seashell broadcast station and talk to his wife late at night? Murmur, whisper, shout, scream, yell. But what would he whisper? What would he yell? What could he say? And suddenly, she was so strange. He couldn't believe he knew her at all. He was in someone else's house, like those other jokes people told of the gentleman drunk coming home late at night, unlocking the wrong door, entering a wrong room, and betting with a stranger and getting up early and going to work, and neither of them the wiser. Miller, he whispered. What? I didn't mean to startle you. What I want to know is, well, when do we meet and where? When do we meet for what? She asked. I mean, originally. He knew she must be frowning in the dark. He clarified it. The first time we ever met. Where was it? And when? Why? It was at she stopped. I don't know, she said. He was cold. Can't you remember? It's been so long. Only 10 years, that's all. Only 10. Don't get excited. I'm trying to think. She laughed an odd little laugh that went up and up. Funny. How funny not to remember where and when you met your husband or wife. He lay massaging his eyes, his brow, and the back of his neck. Slowly, he held both hands over his eyes and applied a steady pressure there, as if to crush memory into place. It was suddenly more important than any other thing in a lifetime that he know where he had met Mildred. It doesn't matter, she was up in the bathroom now, and he heard the water running and the swallowing sound she made. No, I guess not, he said. He tried to count how many times she swallowed, and he thought of the visit from the two zinc oxide-faced men with the cigarettes in the straight-lined mouths, and the electronic-eyed snake winding down into the layer upon layer of night and stone and stagnant spring water, and he wanted to call out to her. How many have you taken tonight? The capsules. How many will you take later and not know? And so on every hour. Or maybe not tonight, tomorrow night. And me not sleeping tonight or tomorrow night, or any night for a long while. Now that this has started, and he thought of her lying on the bed, and with the two technicians standing straight over her, not bent with concern, but only standing straight, arms folded, and he remembered thinking that if she died, he was certain he wouldn't cry, for it will be the dying of an unknown, a street face, a newspaper image, and it was suddenly so very wrong that he had begun to cry, not at death, but at the thought of not crying at death. A silly empty man near a silly empty woman, while the hunger snake made her still more empty. How did you get so empty? He wondered. Who takes it out of you? And that awful flower the other day, the dandelion, it had summed up everything, hadn't it? What a shame. You're not in love with anyone. And why not? Well, wasn't there a wall between him and Mildred? When you came down to it, literally not just one wall, but so far, 3, and expensive too. And the uncles, the aunts, the cousins, the nieces, the nephews that lived in those walls, and the gibbering pack of 3 apes that said nothing, 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 and said it loud, that said nothing, 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 and said it loud, loud, loud. He had taken to calling them relatives from the very first. How's Uncle Louis today? Who? And Auntie Ma. and Aunt Maudie. The most significant memory he had of Mildred really was of a little girl. The most significant memory he had of Mildred really was of a little girl in a forest without trees. How odd! Or rather, a little girl lost on a plateau where there used to be trees. You could feel the memory of their shapes all about. Sitting in the center of the living room. The living room. What a good job of laboring that was now. No matter when he came in, the walls were always talking to Mildred. Something must be done. Yes, something must be done. Well, let's not stand and talk. Let's do it. I'm so mad I could spit. What was it all about? Mildred couldn't say. Who was mad at whom? Mildred didn't quite know. What were they going to do? Well said, Mildred. Wait around and see. He had waited around to see. A great thunderstorm of sound gushed from the walls. Music bombarded him at such an immense volume that his bones were almost shaken from the tendons. He felt his jaw vibrate, his eyes wobble in his head. He was a victim of concussion. When it was all over, he felt like a man who had been thrown off a cliff. Whirled in a centrifuge and spat out over a waterfall that fell into emptiness and never quite touched bottom. Never quite, though not quite touched bottom. And you fell so fast, you didn't touch the sides either. Never quite touched anything. The thunder faded, the music died. There, said Mildred. And it was indeed remarkable. Something had happened, even though the people in the walls of the room had barely moved, and nothing had really been settled. He had the impression that someone had turned on a washing machine, or sucked you up in a gigantic vacuum. You drowned in music and pure cacophony. Don't know if that word is pronounced correctly. Whatever. He came out of the room, sweating and on the point of collapse. Behind him, Mildred sat in her chair, and the voices went on again. Well, everything will be all right here. We'll be all right now, said an aunt. Oh, don't be too sure, said a cousin. Now, don't get angry. Who's angry? You are. I am? You're mad. Why would I be mad? Because that's all very well, That's all very well, cried Montag. But what are they mad about? Who are those people? Who's that man and who's that woman? Are they husband and wife? Are they divorced? Engaged? What? Good God, nothing is connected up. They, said Mildred. Well, they had this fight, you see. They certainly fight a lot. You should listen. I think they're married. Yes, they're married. Why? And if it was not the 3 walls, soon to be 4 walls, and the dream complete, then it was the open car and Mildred driving 100 miles an hour across town. He shouting at her and her shouting back, and both trying to hear what was said, but hearing only the scream of the car. At least keep it down to the minimum, he yelled. What? She cried. Keep it down to 55, the minimum, he shouted. The what? She shrieked. Speed, he shouted, and she pushed it up to 105 miles an hour and tore the breath from his mouth. When they stepped out of the car, She had the seashells stuffed in her ears. Silence. Only the wind blowing softly. Mildred. He startled in bed. He reached over and pulled the tiny musical insect out of her ear. Mildred. Mildred? Yes, her voice was faint. Yes, her voice was faint. He felt he was one of the creatures electronically he inserted between the slots of the phonocolor walls, speaking, but the speech not piercing the crystal barrier. He could only patomate, hoping she would turn his way and see him. They could not touch through the glass. Mildred, do you know that girl I was telling you about? What girl? She was almost asleep. The girl next door. What girl next door? You know, the high school girl. Clarence, her name is. Oh yes, said his wife. I haven't seen her in a few days. 4 days to be exact. Have you seen her? No. I've meant to talk to you about her. Strange. Oh, I know the one you mean. I thought you would. Her, said Mildred in the dark room. What about her? Said Montag. I meant to tell you. Forgot. Tell me now. What is it? I think she's gone. Gone? Whole family moved out somewhere. But she's gone for good. I think she's dead. We couldn't be talking about the same girl. No, the same girl. McClellan. Run over by a car 4 days ago. I'm not sure, but I think she's dead. The family moved away. The family moved out later. The family moved out anyway. I don't know, but I think she's dead. You're not sure of it? No, not sure. No, not sure. Pretty sure. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Forgot. 4 days ago. I forgot all about it. 4 days ago, he said quietly, lying there. They lay there in the dark room, not moving. Either of them. Good night, he said. He heard a faint rustle. Her hand moved. The electric fumble moved like a praying mantis on the pillow, touched by her hand. Now it was in her ear again, humming. He listened, and his wife was singing under her breath. Outside the house, a shadow moved. An autumn wind rose up and faded away. But there was something else in the silence that he heard. It was like a breath exhaled upon the window. It was like a faint drift of greenish luminescent smoke. The motion was a single huge October leaf, blowing across the lawn and away. The hound, he thought. It's out there tonight. It's out there now. If I open the window. He did not open the window. Another death? Of all the people I think I would trust to hear news of someone else dying in this book, Mildred would be probably one of the last people. Even when she is Montag's wife. Like, she just does not care. Just surrounded by TV screens. But yeah, also Clarence, she could not be dead after the old woman. This is either a joke or like definitely serious, or just not confirmed. It's just uncertain news, just very not confirmed, coming from a source that only proclaimed it a couple of days later. He had chills and fever in the morning. You can't be sick, said Mildred. He closed his eyes over the hotness. Yes, but you were all right last night. No, I wasn't all right. He heard the relatives shouting in the parlor. Mildred stood over his bed curiously. He felt her there. He saw her without opening his eyes. Her hair burnt by chemicals to brittle straw. Her eyes with a kind of cataract unseen, but suspicious far behind the pupils. The reddened pouting lips, the body as thin as a praying mantis from dieting, her flesh like white bacon. He could remember her no other way. Will you bring me aspirin and water? You've got to get up, she said. It's noon. You've slept 5 hours later than usual. Will you turn the parlor off? He asked. That's my family. Will you turn it off for a sick man? I'll turn it down. She went out of the room and did nothing to the parlor and came back. Is that better? Thanks. That's my favorite program, she said. What about the aspirin? You've never been sick before. She went away again. Well, I'm sick now. I'm not going to work tonight. Call BT for me. You acted funny last night, she returned, humming. Where's the aspirin? He glanced at the water glass. She handed him. Oh, she walked to the bath again. Did something happen? A fire is all. I had a nice evening, she said, in the bathroom. What doing? The parlor. What was on? Programs. What programs? Some of the best ever. Who? Oh, you know, the bunch. Yes, the bunch. He pressed at the pain in his eyes, and suddenly the odor of kerosene made him vomit. Mildred came in, humming. She was surprised. Why would you do that? He looked with dismay at the floor. We burned an old woman with her books. It was a good thing the rugs washable. She fetched a mop and worked on it. I went to Helen last night. Couldn't you get the shows in your own parlor? Sure, but it's nice visiting. She went out into the parlor. He heard her singing. Mildred, he called. She returned, singing, snapping her fingers softly. Aren't you going to ask me about last night? He said. What about it? We burnt 1,000 books. We burnt a woman. Well, the parlor was exploding with sound. We burnt copies of Dante. We burnt copies of Dante and Swift and Marcus Aurelius. Wasn't he an European? Something like that. Wasn't he a radical? I never read him. He was a radical. Mildred fiddled with the telephone. You don't expect me to call Captain Beatty, do you? You must. Don't shout. I wasn't shouting. He was up in bed, suddenly enraged. Suddenly enraged and flushed, shaking. The parlor roared in the hot air. I can't call him. I can't tell him I'm sick. Why? Because you're afraid, he thought. A child feigning illness. Afraid to call because after a moment's discussion, and the conversation would run so. Yes, Captain, I feel better already. I'll be in at 10 o'clock tonight. You're not sick, said Mildred. Montag fell back in bed. He reached under his pillow. The hidden book was still there. Mildred, how would it be if maybe I quit my job for a while. You want to give up everything after all these years of working because one night some woman and her books. You should have seen her, Miller. You should have seen her, Millie. She's nothing to me. She shouldn't have had books. It was her responsibility. She should have thought of that. I hate her. She's got you going, and next thing you know, we'll be out. No house, no job, nothing. You weren't there. You didn't see, he said. There must be something in books, things we can't imagine, to make a woman stay in a burning house. There must be something there. You don't stay for nothing. She was simple-minded. She was irrational as you and I, more so perhaps, and we burnt her. That's water under the bridge. No, not water. Fire. You ever seen a burnt house? It smoldered for days. Well, this fire will last me the rest of my life. God, I've been trying to put it out in my mind all night. I'm crazy with trying. You should have thought of that before becoming a fireman. Thought, he said. Was I given a choice? My grandfather and father were firemen. In my sleep, I ran after them. The parlor was playing a dance tune. This is the day you go on the early shift, said Mildred. You should have gone 2 hours ago. I just noticed. It's not just the woman that died, said Montag. Last night, I thought about all that kerosene I've used the past 10 years, and I thought about books. And for the first time, I realized that a man was behind each one of the books. A man had to think them up. A man had to take a long time to put them down on paper. And I would never even thought that thought before. He got out of bed. Giving respect to books. It took some man, a lifetime maybe, to put some of his thoughts down, looking around at the world and life, and then I come along in 2 minutes, and boom, it's all over. Let me alone, said Mildred. I didn't do anything. Let you alone. That's all very well, but how can I leave myself alone? We need not to be let alone. We need to be really bothered once in a while. How long is it since you were really bothered about something important and about something real? And then he shut up, for he remembered last week, and the 2 white stones staring up at the ceiling, and the pump snake with the probing eye, and the 2 soap-faced men with the cigars moving in their mouths when they talked. But that was another Mildred. That was a Mildred so deep inside this one, so bothered, really bothered, that the 2 women had never met. He turned away. Mildred said, well, now that you've done it, out front of the house, look who's here. I don't care. There's a Phoenix car just drove up, and a man in a black shirt with an orange snake stitched on his arm coming up the front walk. Captain Beatty, he said. Captain Beatty. Montag did not move, but stood looking into the cold whiteness of the wall immediately before him. Go let him in, will you? Tell him I'm sick. Tell him yourself. She ran a few steps this way. She ran a few steps this way, a few steps that, and stopped, eyes wide, when the front door speaker called her name, softly. Mrs. Montag, someone here. Mrs. Montag, someone's here. Fading. Montag made sure the book was well hidden behind the pillow, and climbed slowly back into bed, arranged the covers over his knees and across his chest, half sitting, and after a while Mildred moved and went out of the room, and Captain Beatty strolled in, his hands in his pockets. Shut the relatives up, said Beatty, looking around at everything except Montag and his wife. This time Mildred ran. The yammering voices stopped yelling in the parlor. Captain Beatty sat down in the most comfortable chair with a peaceful look on his ruddy face. He took time to prepare air and light his brass pipe and puff out a great smoke cloud. Just thought I would come by and see how the sick man is. How would you guess? Beatty smiled his smile, which showed the candy pinkness of his gums and tiny candy whiteness of his teeth. I've seen it all. You were going to call for a night. Montag sat in bed. Well, said Beatty, take the night off. He examined his eternal matchbox, the lid of which said, guaranteed 1,000,000 lights in this igniter. 1,000,000 lights in this igniter, and began to strike the chemical match abstractedly. Blow out, strike. Blow out, strike. Speak a few words. Blow out. He looked at the flame. He blew. He looked at the smoke. When will you be well? Tomorrow. The next day, maybe. First the week. Beatty puffed his pipe. Every fireman, sooner or later, hits this. They only need understanding, to know how the wheels run, to know the history of our profession. They don't feed it to rookies like they used to. Damn shame. Puff. Only fire chiefs remember it now. Puff. I'll let you in on it. Mildred fidgeted. Beatty took a full minute to settle himself in and think back for what he wanted to say. When did it all start, you ask? This job of ours. How did it come about? Where? When? Well, I would say it really got started around about a thing called the Civil War. The American Civil War, maybe. Even though our rulebook claims it was founded earlier, the fact is we didn't get along well until photography came into its own. Then motion pictures in the early 20th century, radio, television, things began to have mass. Montag sat in bed, not moving. And because they had mass, they became simpler, said Beatty. Once, books appealed to a few people, here, there, everywhere. They could afford to be different. The world was roomy. But then the world got full of eyes and elbows and mouths. Double, triple, quadruple population. Films and radios. Magazines, books leveled down to a sort of pace-putting norm. Do you follow me? I think so. Sorry to explain how it got to the world of Fahrenheit 451, I think. Beatty peered at the smoke pattern he had put out on the air. Picture it. 19th century man with his horses, dogs, carts, slow motion. Then in the 20th century, speed up your camera, books cut shorter, condensations, digests, tabloids. Everything boils down to the gag, the snap ending. Snap ending? I think Mildred nodded. Classics cut to 15-minute radio classics cut to fit 15-minute radio shows. Then cut again to fill a 2-minute book column. Winding up at last as a 10 or 12 line dictionary resume. Winding up at last as a 10 or 12 line dictionary resume. I exaggerate, of course. The dictionaries were for reference, but many were those whose sole knowledge of Hamlet, you know the title, Certainly, Montag, it is probably only a faint rumor of a title to you, Mrs. Montag, whose sole knowledge, as I say, of Hamlet was a one-page digest in a book that claimed, "Now, at last, you can read all the classics. Keep up with your neighbors. Do you see, out of the nursery into the college and back to the nursery, there's your intellectual pattern for the past 5 centuries or more." Mildred arose and began to move around the room, picking things up and putting them down. Beatty ignored her and continued. "Speed up the film, Montag. Quick. Click, pick, look, eye. Now flick here, there, swift, pace, up, down, in, out. Why, who, why, how, who, what, where. Bang, smack, wallop, bing, bong, boom. Digest. This digest. Politics, 1 column, 2 sentences, a headline. Then, in the mid-air, all vanishes. World man's mind around about so fast, under the pumping hands of publishers, exploiters, broadcasters, that the centrifuge flings off all unnecessary time-wasting thought." The most famous and infamous line of Fahrenheit 451. Ladies and gentlemen, there it is. Speed up the film, Montag. Quick. Click, pick, look, eye. Now flick here, there, swift, pace. Up, down, in, out. Why, how, who, what, where. Bang, smack, wallop, bing, bong, boom. Digest. Politics, 1 column, 2 sentences, a headline. Then, in mid-air, all vanishes. World man's mind around about so fast, under the pumping hands of publishers, exploiters, broadcasters, that the centrifuge flings off all unnecessary time-wasting thought. My God. Mildred smoothed the bedclothes. Montag felt his heart jump and jump again as he patted his pillow. Right now, she was pulling at his shoulder, trying to get him to move so she could take the pillow out and fix it nicely and put it back, and perhaps cry out and stare at, or simply reach down her hand and say, "What's this?" and hold up the hidden book with touching innocence. School is shortened, discipline relaxed, philosophies, histories, languages dropped, English and spelling gradually neglected, finally almost completely ignored. Life is immediate. The job counts. Pleasure lies all about after work. Why learn anything save pressing buttons, pulling switches, fitting nuts and bolts? "Let me fix your pillow," said Mildred. "No," whispered Montag. "The zipper displaces the button, and a man lacks just that much time to think while dressing at dawn. A philosophical hour, and thus a Machiavelli hour," Mildred said. "Here, get away," said Montag. "Life becomes one big bratfall, Montag. Everything bang, boff, and wow." "Wow," said Mildred, yanking at the pillow. "For God's sake, let me be," cried Montag passionately. Beatty opened his eyes wide. Mildred's hand had frozen behind the pillow. Her fingers were tracing the book's outline. As the shape became familiar, her face looked surprised and then stunned. Her mouth opened to ask a question. Emptied the theaters save for clowns and furnished the rooms with glass walls and pretty colors running up and down the walls like confetti or blood or sherry or something. You look like baseball, don't you, Montag? Baseball's a fine game. Now, Beatty was almost invisible. A voice somewhere behind a screen of smoke. "What's this?" said Mildred, almost with delight. Montag heaved back against her arms. "What's this here?" "Sit down," said Montag shouted. She jumped away, her hands empty. "We're talking." Beatty went on as if nothing had happened. You like bowling, don't you, Montag?" "Bowling? Yes." "And golf?" "Golf is a fine game." "Basketball? A fine game." "Billiards, pool, football? Fine games, all of them. More sports for everyone. Group spirit, fun. And you don't have to think, organized and super organized, super sports. More cartoons and books, more pictures. The mind drinks less and less. Impatience, highlights full of crowds, going somewhere, nowhere. The gasoline refuge. The towns turn into motels. People in nomadic surges from place to place, following the moon tides. I'm gonna fix this a little bit as the tension is kind of building here. Okay, back to it. Dear God, BT is just laying it all out for us. Okay. Towns into motels, people in nomadic surges from place to place, following the moon tides, leaving tonight in the room where you slept this noon, and I the night before. Mildred went out the room and slammed the door. The parlor aunts began to laugh at the parlor, their uncles. "Now, let's take up the minorities in our civilization, shall we? Bigger the population, the more minorities. Don't step on the toes of the dog lovers, the cat lovers, doctors, lawyers, merchants, chefs, and Mormons, Baptists, utilitarians." Unitarians, second generation Chinese, Swedes, Italians, Germans, Texans, Brooklynites, Irishmen, people from Oregon or Mexico. The people in this book, this play, this TV serial are not meant to represent any actual painters, cartographers, mechanics anywhere. The bigger your market, Montag, the less you handle controversy. Remember that all the all the minor minorities, with the navels to be clean, offers full of evil thoughts. Lock up your typewriters. They did. Magazines became a nice blend of vanilla tapioca. A nice blend of vanilla tapioca. Books so the damned snobbish critics said were dishwater. No wonder books stopped selling, the critics said. But the public, knowing what it wanted, spinning happily, let the comic books survive. And the three-dimensional sex magazines, of course, there you have it, Montag. It didn't come from the government down. It was no dictum, no declaration. There was no dictum, no declaration, no censorship to start with. No. Technology, mass exploitation, and minority pleasure carried the trick. Thank God. Today, thanks to them, you can stay happy all day. You are allowed to read comics, the good old confessions, or trade journals. Yes, but what about the firemen then? Asked Montag. Ah, Beatty leaned forward in the faint mist of smoke from his pipe. What more easily explained and natural, with school turning out more runners and jumpers, racers, tinkers, grabbers, snatchers, filers, and swimmers instead of examiners, critics, knowers, and the imaginative creators. The word intellectual, of course, became the swear word it deserved to be. Became the swear word it deserved to be. You always dread the unfamiliar. Surely you remember the boy in your own class surely you remember the boy in your own school class who was exceptionally bright, did most of the reciting and answering, while the others sat like so many leaden idols hating him. And wasn't it this bright boy you selected for beatings and tortures after class? Of course it was. We must all be alike. Not everyone born free and equal, as the Constitution says, but everyone made equal. Each man the image of every other, then all are happy. For there are no mountains to make them cower, to judge themselves against. So, a book is a loaded gun in the house next door. Burn it. Take the shot from the weapon. Breached man's mind. Who knows who might be the target of the well-read man? Me, I won't stomach them. For a minute. I won't stomach them for a minute. And so, when houses were finally fireproofed completely all over the world, you were correct in your assumption the other night. There was no longer a need of firemen for the old purposes. They were given the new jobs as custodians of our peace of mind, the focus of our understandable and rightful dread of being inferior. Official censors, judges, and executors, and executors. That's you, Montag, and that's me. The door to the parlor opened, and Mildred stood there, looking at Beatty and then at Montag. Behind her, the walls of the room were flooded with green and yellow and orange fireworks sizzling and bursting to some music composed almost completely of trap drums, tom-toms, and syllables. Her mouth moved and she was saying something about the covered and she was saying something, but the sound covered it. Beatty knocked his pipe into the palm of his pink hand, studied the ashes as if they were a symbol to be diagnosed, and searched for meaning. You must understand that our civilization is so vast that we can't have our minorities upset and stirred. Ask yourself, what do we want in this country above all? People want to be happy. Isn't that right? Haven't you heard it all your life? I want to be happy, people say. Well, aren't they? Don't we keep them moving? Don't we give them fun? That's all we live for, isn't it? For pleasure, for titillation. You must admit, our culture provides plenty of these. Yes, Montag could lip read what Mildred was saying in the doorway. He tried not to look at her mouth, because then Beatty might turn and read what was there too. Colored people don't like little black Sambo. Burn it. White people don't feel good about Uncle Tom's Cabin. Burn it. Someone's written a book on tobacco and cancer of the lungs. The cigarette people are weeping. Burn the book. Serenity, Montag. Peace, Montag. Take your fight outside. Better yet, into the incinerator. Funerals are unhappy and pagan. Eliminate them. And 2. 5 minutes after a person is dead, he's on his way to the big flue. Well, the incinerators. 5 minutes after a person is dead, he's on his way to the big flue. The incinerators serviced by helicopters all over the country. 10 minutes after death, a man's speck of black dust. Let's not quibble over individuals with memoriams. Forget them. Burn all. Burn everything. Fire is bright and fire is clean. The fireworks died in the parlor behind Mildred. She had stopped talking at the same time. A miraculous coincidence. Montag held his breath. There was a girl next door, he said slowly. She's gone now. I think dead. I can't even remember her face. But she was different. How? How did she happen? Beatty smiled. Here or there's bound to occur. Clarence McClellan? We have a record on her family. We've watched them carefully. Heredity and environments Heredity and environments are funny things. You can't rid yourselves of all the odd ducks in just a few years. The home environment can undo a lot you tried to do at school. That's why we've lowered the kindergarten age year after year. Until now, we're almost snatching them from the cradle. We had some false alarms on the McClellans. When they lived in Chicago, never found a book. Uncle had a mixed record. Antisocial. The girl, she was a time bomb. The family had been feeding her in the subconsciousness. I'm sure, from what I saw of her school record, she didn't want to know how a thing was done, but why. That can be embarrassing. You ask why to a lot of things, and you wind up very unhappy indeed. If you keep at it, the poor girl. You ask why to a lot of things, and you wind up very unhappy. If you keep at it, the poor girl's better off dead. Yes, dead. Luckily, queer ones like her don't happen often. We know how to nip most of them in the bud early. You can't build a house without nails and wood. You don't want a house built, hide the nails and wood. If you don't want a man unhappy politically, Don't give him two sides to a question to worry him. Give him one. Better yet, give him none. Let him forget there is such a thing as war. If the government is inefficient, top-heavy, and tax-madened, and tax-mad, better be all those than that people worry over. Than that people worry over it. Peace, Montag. Give the people contests they win by remembering the words to more popular songs, or the names of state capitals, or how much corn Iowa grew last year. Cram them full of non-combustible data. And choke and chalk them so damned full of facts they feel stuffed and absolutely brilliant with information. Then they'll feel their thinking. They'll get a sense of motion without moving, and they'll be happy because facts of that sort don't change. Don't give them any slippery stuff like philosophy or sociology to tie things up with. That way lies any man who can take a TV wall apart and put it back together again, and most men can nowadays, is happier than any man who tries to slide rule, measure, and equate the universe, which just won't be measured or equated without making man bestial and lonely. I know, I've tried it. To hell with it. So bring on your clubs and parties, your acrobats and magicians, your daredevils, jet cars, motorcycle helicopters, your sex and heroin. More of everything to do with automatic reflex. If the drama is bad, if the film says nothing, if the play is hollow, sting me with the Derman loudly. I'll think I'm responding to the play when it's only a tactile reaction to vibration. But I don't care. I just like solid entertainment. Beatty got up. I must be going. Lecture's over. I think I've clarified things. The important thing for you to remember, Montag, is where the happiness boys, the Dixie duo, you and I and the others. We stand against the small tide of those who want to make everyone unhappy with conflicting theory and thought. We have our fingers in the dike. Hold steady. Don't let the torrent of I need to get this word pronunciations right. And drear philosophy drown our world. We depend on you. We don't think you realize how important you are, we are, to our happy world as it stands now. Beatty shook Montag's limp hand. Montag still sat as if the house were collapsing about him and he could not move. In the bed, Mildred had vanished from the door. One last thing, said Beatty. At least once in his career, every fireman gets an itch. What do the books say? He wonders. Oh, to scratch that itch, eh? Well, Montag, take my word for it. I've had to read a few in my time to know what I was about, and the books say nothing. Nothing you can teach or believe. They're about non-existent people, figments of imagination. If they're fiction, and if they're non-fiction, it's work. They are about non-existent people, figments of imagination, if they're fiction. And if they're not and if they're non-fiction, it's worse. one professor calling another an idiot, one philosopher screaming down another skillet. All of them running about, putting out the stars and extinguishing the sun. You come away lost. Well then, what if a fireman accidentally, really not intending anything, takes a book home with him? Montag twitched. The open door looked at him with its great vacant eye. And natural error, curiosity alone, said Beatty. We don't get over anxious or mad. We let the fireman keep the book 24 hours. If he hasn't burnt it by then, we simply come, burn it for him. Of course. Montag's mouth was dry. Well, Montag, will you take another later shift today? Will we see you tonight, perhaps? I don't know, said Montag. What? Beatty looked faintly surprised. Montag shut his eyes. I'll be in later, maybe. We'll certainly miss you if you didn't show up, said Beatty, putting his pipe in his pocket thoughtfully. I'll never come in again, thought Montag. Get well and keep well, said Beatty. He turned and went out through the open door. Montag watched the window as Beatty drove away in his glimmering yellow flame-colored Beetle with the black char-colored tires. Oh my god. Dear God. Like I said, we're just gonna stop at page 60, so we're just gonna read until this is over, and then that'll be it for the stream. Anyways, that's a lot of stuff explained by BT. It was just the captain of Montag's crew, and he just came in and just, as like Montag's like resting, just lectures him and answers all of his questions with some information about the world of Fahrenheit 451. Anyways, across the street and down the way the other houses stood, with their flat fronts. What was it Clarence had said one afternoon? No front porches. My uncle says there used to be front porches, and people sat there sometimes at night, talking when they wanted to talk, rocking, and not talking when they didn't want to talk. Sometimes they just sat there and thought about things, turned things over. My uncle says the architects got rid of the front porches because they didn't look well. But my uncle says that was merely rationalizing it. The real reason, hidden underneath, might be they don't want people sitting like that, doing nothing, rocking, talking. That was the wrong kind of social life. People talked too much, and they had time to think. So they ran off with the porches, and the gardens too. Not many gardens anymore to sit around in. And look at the furniture. No rocking chairs anymore. They're too comfortable. Get people up and running around, my uncle says. And my uncle. Her voice faded. This is like, this last paragraph, it's like what, like the last thing Montag has like memory of what Clarence had said to him. And with this paragraph, that will be it for this reading stream of Fahrenheit 451. This time is a bit more crazy stuff going on. So like, got seen when an old woman just decided to burn down with the house that had her books, and Montag and his fireman crew just watched her burn with the house along with the entire neighborhood that also came out to see it. So that's our first death documented. And then we got a second death from Clarence, who got hit by a car or something like that. Either way, she's also, besides the old woman, Clarence, the young teenager Montag talked to and who had opened Montag's mind up, is now also dead. Because she's an odd breed who asks not just how, but also why. Like this universe, they like mindless working people instead of also thinkers. Because their point is to make everyone happy, and deleting things that kind of conflict with happiness from their perspective is not good. So they have to burn all the books. That's one way to make happiness, but doesn't lead to total happiness at all, I would say. And we also got an entire lecture from Captain Beatty while Montag is like faking illness or actually have illness. Either way, Captain Beatty just came into Montag's house and then just gave a lecture to pretty much everything we need to know about what Ray Bradbury is thinking about, and also how Fahrenheit 451's world kind of worked and how it got to how it is, as we are seeing in the book. And we are currently now, after 3 live streams, you count the testing live stream, but I don't count that. After 2 live streams, we've got to page 60. Last time we started at 30. And we've pretty much read like almost like half of the book. You still got like 98 pages to go. But I think I will be reading them in the future live streams that I'll be having of this book. So I think in total there will be in total 5 live streams of me reading this book. So yeah, I think that'll be it for this live stream, guys. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, please make sure to click on the like button on the video and subscribe to the channel if you like my videos, and also comment on the videos and community posts to get your chance of being in shoutouts and leaving your mark on my YouTube channel's history. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next live stream or video. Bye.